This episode is brought to you by Active Digital, where we help customer-obsessed companies become destination brands.
And then you think about the things that you're telling your customers. And honestly, like when that's not aligned, people can smell it.
You just heard from my friend, my colleague, and now co-host, David Antoline. And today we're talking values on Experience Leader. Do you want to decommoditize your products and services? Do you want to become a destination brand, increase your revenue, and have more control over your pricing? Well, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll talk about how to create great customer experiences and how to orient your company to enable them. I'm your host, Evan Smith, and this is the Experience Leader Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I am so excited and so honored to have my good friend and colleague, David Antoline, on the show. He is coming on actually to be my co-host now. We're doing a lot of cool things together. Really excited to have you, Dave.
Man, it's good to be here. I'm still stoked from the intro music. Like I want whatever you just said. Can I have a couple of those?
Hey, we're trying to do that, man. We're trying to do that.
I love it, man. No, it's good to be here. Appreciate you having me, and it's gonna be a fun ride, brother.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, talking about fun ride, big news this week is I am actually joining David's new company, Active Digital, and we're actually focusing on trying to help companies create better customer experiences, especially in the digital age here. And so I wanted to be able to bring David in here to talk about, just some of your background. How'd you decide to start the firm, and what do you see happening in the future? So we'll jump in with just like, tell folks about yourself, kind of how, what's your story?
Yeah, so my background is largely technology. So for me, schooling, mechanical engineering, computer engineering, started hands-on like a lot of people do. And so like hands in the code, building stuff. Like for me, building has always been the fun part. And I've had the pleasure of, moving between boutique consulting and being able to work with some really, really interesting companies in very specific ways. I've worked in big tech and what that means to scale out both from a product and a services standpoint and how those things mesh together. And we'll probably get into a lot of those examples as we talk through some stuff. Also have had the ability to actually live on the product startup side and focus on some niche markets with software products, that were SaaS platforms that filled some specific areas. But for me, as I've kind of switched between those things and even personally moving between being hands-on, thinking about things as a product owner, thinking about what it means to tie that in to run a business and to frankly properly align with the businesses that we were selling to, partnering with, et cetera. For me, it's kind of been this fun ride of sitting in a lot of the seats, seeing things from a lot of different angles. But, one of the things that really excites me the most is the ability to, I think about impact a lot, impact of what I can do, impact of what the people around me can do if I'm able to really pour into them and enable and frankly, have it go both ways. I've benefited tremendously from folks that have poured into me and have been there along the ride. And so one of the really fun ways to do that is to look at being able to work hand in hand with a bunch of different organizations at once, and consulting in particular is a great way to do that. And so for me at this stage in the journey, you and I are coming off and, not so long ago being kind of, on our journey together in the consulting world. And for me, this is a chance to kind of stay that course a little bit, but also to kind of double down on some things that frankly, I have just grown to love and grown to be incredibly passionate about. It's a lot of the same stuff you're passionate about, which is why we're on this together. And yeah, man. So we'll get into all of that. But for me, it really is just this, as you kind of move along in your career, I think the best case scenario is that you can continue to focus on making the biggest impact you can in the areas that most excite you, right? Because that allows you to show up the right way every day. And so I couldn't be more stoked to kind of be kicking off this next thing and be able to say that for real.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. It's absolutely important. It's one of the things that I talk about. You're not going to be able to create a great employee experience. Was a huge part of actually being able to deliver a great experience to customers, whether that's through product or service. It all comes through, right? If they're not having a good time, your customers probably aren't going to have a good time.
It is so true in every business, but I think particularly as a service organization, and this gets missed sometimes, and frankly, probably at times in my career, I have missed this, or at the very least, have overlooked it. But you look at how the organization, as a vendor, as a partner, functions. And then you think about the things that you're telling your customers, and honestly, like when that's not aligned, and we'll probably talk a lot about this as we kind of go through, some of these topics that I know we want to cover in the coming weeks and months. But the truth is, when that alignment isn't there, people can smell it,
Totally.
That's true internally and it's true externally. And there's a big gap for a lot of organizations right now in what they're able to say versus how they're able to operate. And it's hard to get right. There's no doubt about it. I don't have the exact right playbook any more than anybody else does, but it is something that we can make the choice to focus on and to get better at. And for me, especially at this part in the journey, it's like, yeah, that's a thing that deserves focus. The people that are alongside us, like they deserve that focus. Our clients deserve that focus. Their customers do as well. So that alignment is super important. Couldn't agree more,
man. And it's huge. It's not something that I find to be a common understanding. And even if it's understood, it's hard to execute. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy for us to execute. It's not easy for anybody to execute. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. And we probably wouldn't have a reason to start a firm, right?
Yep. No doubt.
But we do, because it is hard. And people do need help. And so we're really excited about being hardcore about actually living out what we're preaching around having all of these things in place and having that alignment, so that you can actually execute. Man, I want to get into a little bit of your story. You talked about some of the consulting side of it, and you glossed over the product side. But David has actually he started his own software company. It was called Arms, right?
That's correct.
Tell the Arms story for folks, because I want you to kind of cover that side of actually putting a product in the market and actually finding a fit and it taking off. I think that it's a really interesting story. I'd love for people to hear.
Yeah, and I mean, I think anyone that's lived in both camps, and I'm oversimplifying by making it seem like there's only two camps, but I think anybody that's lived in both camps. So, you've kind of been in the services world, and then you think, okay, well, yeah, it's got to be easy enough to spin up a product, right? We do this all the time. You find out pretty quickly, like, all right, that's a different ball game. And so for me on that journey, I had the good fortune of being with a smaller firm that happened to be acquired by Red Hat. So was living in big tech, or I don't know, maybe Red Hat was medium tech at that point in time. They're definitely big tech now. So I had some nice sort of inside look, especially in my time at Red Hat, of running a services organization, but doing it within the bounds of a product company, and really seeing some of that interplay, frankly, on the inside. And it's hard to do for sure. But it was a very kind of eye-opening experience for me of, okay, yeah, I can see how the folks that are super dedicated to, for Red Hat, there was a very specific set of products. In their case, it was all coming, through the open source channel, and how that worked and how that flowed through to service. And so for me, it was a natural extension to then think about, okay, but from a platform perspective, like what's out there that can be built. What are those markets that are just waiting for that type of disruption? And so I had some amazing partners that were also on the lookout, and the three of us were really able to, along with a bunch of other great folks, to be perfectly honest, we're able to find a cool opportunity. In this case, it was in the athletic space, and particularly in the college athletic spaces where we first focused, where it was an interesting opportunity to take a pattern that wasn't new, which is the idea of it's a core system, right? So call it an ERP, call it a CRM, call it a mashup of the two. You find this in a lot of different industries, but what we found is in that industry in particular, and you'll see this in other spots, right, in other markets, where the folks that are in it, they're feeling the pain of doing something that might not necessarily be considered a business, but at the end of the day, like, it's a business, and the challenges that they face, how that flows through, all of that resembles any other highly regulated entity that's out there. And it's funny to compare, a college athletic department to a bank, but the truth is smaller scale, but it's the same type of challenges. And so the challenge for us then, really from the ground up, was how do you purpose build a platform that treats that type of entity, that is highly regulated, that's very compliance based, that has some very specific objectives around how they interact with student athletes, what that life cycle looks like. We thought a lot about the athlete and what it means from the time you're 3 years old and your parents are the fan of some school, and you kind of get jazzed about that, to potentially getting into athletics yourself, to what that might mean for you as you head into college, whether that's a Division I superstar, or frankly whether you just want to keep playing ball and there's a small enough school that'll let you suit up on Saturdays. Whatever that looks like, looking at that athlete journey, which was really the customer for the athletic department, and tracking that through in a way that not only fulfilled the regulatory conundrum, I think, that a lot of athletic departments are still facing today, if I'm being honest, but certainly we're facing, if I kind of rewind the clock back to 11, 12. So looking at that and saying, okay, how do you build a platform that does that? How do you bring user experience that is superior to the extent that you're actually improving customer experience, and not just, okay, this looks more modern, or it's better than that thing you're using now, or whatever it might be. And the other challenge too, and we'll talk more and more about this because I just find it so fascinating, is, when you're building products for folks that are in an industry that doesn't innovate very quickly, number one, and number two, they probably feel pretty stuck with some of the constraints. Finding ways to get to the heart of the jobs that customer really wants the new platform to perform for them, getting to the heart of their problem, and not necessarily just saying, okay, we'll take that thing that you use today that might be a spreadsheet or whatever, and what if we put a screen together that does that? Well, maybe, right? But actually, what are you trying to do, right? Why do you even look at this every day? Like, this feels like a once a quarter kind of thing. Like, can we have that conversation first? And so I think as a founder in the product world, one of the big challenges, and this is something I feel like I grew a lot in working through this, and frankly, probably screwing it up a bunch of times before I got it better, was that idea of making sure that you listen to the customer, truly listen to them, but also being confident enough in your ability to shape and improve customer experience for them and for their customers in such a way that, like, the end result may look very different than what they have today, but it's supposed to look different. And so we can talk much more about kind of the specifics on that. But for me, that journey was very much about, putting the right team together to just build. And the other thing too, and I'll just say this, when you come up through consulting and then you start a product company, you hit that point a couple months in where you're like, oh, we have to support this forever. So the other thing that I learned real quick on the quality side was, all right, this is going to be a thing that you don't get to walk away. That you own this, right? And those tickets are going to keep pouring in, so you might as well get it right the first time, right? And so you learn different, you get a different appreciation in a good way for what it means to to deploy iteratively and to do all that good stuff that goes along with software development, but also to very much think about, we're putting this thing into the world and it's real, and it's not, you don't just get to pull it back.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of good lessons learned, lots of stuff that was, that I'll certainly carry with me forever, that you kind of figure out like, okay, this is what it's like to build something from scratch, own it, and have it be used by, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and just like realize the impact of that.
That's awesome, man. That's so awesome. I think that that reality of, hey, I own this now, right? Like we have to own this. We're gonna have to continue to support this. Is something that I experience as well. Kind of coming from a product company and having worked at a bank before. So kind of have that kind of sandwiching my consulting days, like trying to basically understand what it looks like to support something long term, and to be able to look at your customer for the way that your product fits in their life, and all of a sudden it's no longer like, hey, this is like the first time that they're experiencing you. Now when you're releasing patches, you're doing all this stuff. There's a relationship there. There's a history there. There's a way that they feel about your company based on the history of using the product, right? I'm not, none of this stuff is rocket science, but it's something that you have to wind up helping everybody who is working on the product. You have to help them understand, guys, if we do this way, understand the history that led up to this and how that's going to make the customer feel if we do this right now,
No doubt about it.
Huge considerations.
Yeah. And there's this feeling of momentum, right? When you're able to focus on a specific problem area and physically build solutions that meet that. And I think, one of the interesting things is that momentum can be super energizing and frankly can empower an organization or a team to do amazing things, because you kind of just start stacking that, right? So it's like the next step you take is one step higher than the last one you did, if you're doing it properly and you can build on that momentum. But it can also kick your butt, and it can steamroll you, and it can feel overwhelming. And so, that's a big thing, right? Is how teams and organizations that are producing some of this stuff, how you handle that momentum and just that integration into the market that you're serving. Do you take those lessons learned and use them as building blocks, or do you allow some of that insecurity to seep in such that you start to think about all the things that you didn't do right, or all the things that you don't know, or the feedback, coming across as something other than constructive, and you allow that to kind of break you down. And in those moments, you can get caught on the kind of the carousel, right? Where it's like, every time you take that next step, you're basically just starting at zero again. That's the scary part. But the fun part is when it's like, no, cool. Like, we are on the path. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to get feedback. We're supposed to learn things we didn't know yesterday. Now let's turn that into the next iteration of this thing that further advances our customers' objectives, right? It further pushes them to where they want to be. And that becomes kind of that measuring stick that you use to basically sanity check, like, what are we doing? Is it having the impact we expect? And back to the employee experience side of things too, right? That is the opportunity for the folks on the team to, every day when they wake up, to re-up and just say, yep, like, we are on this, we are still on this, we're still in it. And for that to really feel like it's coming together.
That's awesome, man. I know, what you said there. I'm sure that the people that have worked with me over the years get tired of hearing me say, like, it is so important for people to feel like they've got a good reason to get out of bed to go to work. They pour that into the product or they don't. They pour that into the service or they don't. And you want to make sure that you're giving them something that they want to pour themselves into, because customers feel that, right? And I think that one of the other sort of huge things that you talked about there is that sort of realization, like, yeah, you're going to get feedback. How do you take that and turn this into positive momentum, right? Like we don't know everything. So we got to take that and turn it into positive momentum. The idea that your customers are coming and giving you feedback about things they would like to see work better. Some people are nicer than others about how they express that, right?
That's fair.
But taking that and seeing that as like, okay, this is an opportunity to step up and say, hey, we are listening to you, we care about you, and actually build relationship with that. Another thing that you said that I think is really, really huge, you were measuring whether you were successful by whether you actually were helping the customer achieve their objective, which is huge. That reorients so many things in a company. And we're all in business. We're in business to be able to be rewarded financially, but it's an outcome. That is an outcome of serving our fellow man, of providing them something that helps them make progress. So measuring it based on how you're helping them meet their objectives means that you're going to get the revenue, because you're always going to be pointing the company and the product and the employees in the right direction to achieve the right thing that results in the outcome, as opposed to measuring it by like, well, how much money did we make? It's like, okay, I'm not saying that that's not important, but the money comes if you hit the objective.
No doubt. Now, I think, when you look at, when you look at a thesis that an organization puts out there to say, if we provide this market with this type of product or service, and we do it in this way, X, Y, Z. I think when you lay that out and you have that sort of company thesis that's out there, you set your values up around, not just around that thesis, but really just to kind of underpin the organization. That is your opportunity to put things on the path that you just described, or to put things on a path that's a little bit different, right? And the hard thing, in addition to frankly just likely being misaligned sooner rather than later, the hard thing about setting these objectives or even your core thesis on something that is fairly dogmatic and not particularly aligned with your customers is that it actually, it's funny, like it probably feels very confident at the time because you're stepping into this. We have an idea, come hell or high water, that idea is going to play out. We know it's going to play out exactly like this. And as soon as things start to kind of take a left turn, which they inevitably do, that confidence flips very quickly to insecurity, right? It flips very quickly to, well, now we feel like everything's broken, right? And there's almost this binary nature of, well, we thought we were right, but I guess we're wrong. And that's not healthy for anybody, right? Versus an approach that says, okay, we're going to measure this by the impact that we're having, and an impact to us means this, right? And so along the way, the path that we take to create that impact, it's going to wind a little bit. And we can't pretend like we know exactly how that's going to play out. It doesn't matter how many startups you've done. It doesn't matter what your playbook looks like. Part of the plan is that you don't know some of that stuff. And so if you're tethered to success on the customer side and a willingness to listen first, now that doesn't mean that you can't be confident in the way that you're approaching your product and the marketplace. These are not mutually exclusive, and in fact, they're both incredibly important. But it makes all the difference in the attitude of what happens when you get banged up a little bit. And the folks that have their sights set in the right direction, they're the ones that, they're still going to have bad days, but you wake up the next day and you say, okay, like that just means that this gets tweaked. Maybe that was just a terrible idea in the first place, so let's just not do that ever again. And then you go forward, right? And you have a team then that can buy into that and can feel that, and they will be right behind you when you march forward.
That's awesome, and that's the having that goal, having the objective be something like that causes people to want to follow you in that direction. It's one of the big things that I point out to companies that I work with, whether that's being in-house or in consulting, um, is you have to give people something to want to follow. Yep. If you're going to lead, you have to be leading them to a place that they want to go in order for that to work. And a lot of times um, when you're placing making a difference, when you're placing making an impact as that thing that you're marching towards, people will get behind that because they are working towards a purpose that's bigger than themselves. Um, I can get out of bed for that every morning. But eventually, if all of our targets are revenue targets, I stop wanting to get out of bed for that because eventually I'm just like, well, what does it mean? What is that doing? There's a lot of ways we can make money. A lot of ways I can make money if that's what my goal is. Then uh, I don't know. It's going to get hard, right? Like you start getting some of the negative feedback, things take a left turn, etc. The insecurity sets in. You have to have something that keeps you focused, that keeps you motivated, and that mission is super critical. I mean, I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to have those values. You bringing that up is amazing. Those values, and I've pretty much hit this, at the last several companies that I've been at. Is just why are we here? Why are we here? Do we understand that? And are we actually allowing that to affect the decisions that we make, or is it just words on a page that we checked a box like, hey, we got a mission? Why are we here, and is that affecting how we do what we do? Is it affecting how we hire? That whole thing, having that nailed down. It's not just woo woo stuff. That's not just woo woo stuff. It can affect whether you're able to hire top talent. It can affect whether you're able to really have a brand that allows customers to connect and identify with you, and therefore affects how much you can charge, because people are willing to pay more. If all of the stuff is there, they're going to pay more for your product, for your service. They're willing to pay more. They start to identify with you. They begin to pull you into their life as a part of their identity, and they're willing to invest in that because it means something to them. Obviously, you got to continue to do all the stuff, right? You got to keep going. You got to you can't you can't ever like sit on your laurels with that stuff. However, if you can keep going, people will become more and more passionate about your products, about your brand, about your services, and it just becomes a virtuous cycle. That's something that if you don't have the beginning piece, if you don't have the values right, if you don't have the mission right, none of that other stuff works. None of that other stuff makes sense. It doesn't have meaning to people. And so I just think it's amazing. I'm gonna brag on David a little bit. We worked together at a consulting firm a couple companies ago for me, and I remember when he came on, talking with a buddy of mine, and he was like, "Oh man, we brought in David." He's like, "I worked with David. David's serious. David doesn't play around, and he's a good guy, but David doesn't play." And I was like, "I want to meet this guy." And we got the chance to work on. We got the chance to work on a strategy team together for a while, and that was kind of my exposure to kind of being on the front lines with you. And I loved the fact that it was everything that you did. One, it was absolutely right. You didn't play around. You're very focused. You're focused on doing work towards a specific objective. The ability to call out when we were off track, the willingness to do that, right? Because not everybody's willing to do that. Not everybody's willing to rock the boat. Just over time, really just respecting David as a leader, as an all around just stand up guy. It's amazing to hear you say some of these things, because I know from experience that when you say that stuff, it's not just running your mouth. You actually believe that stuff and act on it.
Man, some of that I think is just me being old at this point. I've just been around long enough to see some of it. No, I appreciate you saying that, and this is for you and me. Of course, this is neither the beginning nor the end of our journey together. Definitely excited to kind of add this into the mix, but yeah, man, that's what makes this stuff truly fun, though. It's the theorizing about it is a lot of fun. Like, love being able to kind of sit on the couch and kind of talk through this stuff. But there's also there's meaning in the fact that we've been there together, that you've been there, that I've been there in my past. And frankly, when I think about the people that are interested in this topic, when I think about folks that are out there just trying to do this, like, everyone's got their own version of what they've seen that worked, what they've seen that didn't, and it can at times feel like a multivariable equation that just cannot be solved, right? And I think one of the things that is so fun about doing this, and something that I hope that we just get to keep touching on over and over again, is just this idea of, there is comfort to be had in the uncomfortable, right? And frankly, I think when I look back at some of the things that I've done, when I look back at things that people around me have been able to accomplish, and the stuff that was truly meaningful, the stuff that was, call it innovative, call it impactful, lots of good words to throw in there, but it is, a collection of those moments where it was, okay, actually, the reason that thing was so important is that nobody else thought about the problem that way. Nobody else was kind of willing to step out of their component and look at it across, 2 or 3 areas and say, what if, I mean, and a lot of times it's less effort to do it that way. That's the funny thing, right? And so as we dive into, some of the topics that I know you and I want to cover moving forward, I think that is such an amazing recurring theme for a lot of people. It's just that, it's like we're talking about values and mission. And I think about my friends that have come from different parts of the military, and including some pretty deep stuff, and I always think of, like, embrace the suck and what that means, right? And it's like, there's a reason that those sayings get put out there, right? It's not supposed to be easy. But you're also supposed to lean into that stuff because there is a mission there. There is a reason for why you are, pick your metaphor or your job, right? You're stepping out onto the field, stepping out onto the battlefield, frankly, just rolling up and turning your camera on in the morning, like, whatever that is. It's not that it's supposed to be easy, nor is it supposed to be obvious, but I think for those of us that are truly interested in changing the way that folks at the customer side interact with products and services and companies that are out there and making that better, you have to be willing to lean into the uncomfortable. And that's, to kind of to beat this dead horse, like, that is true internally from a cultural standpoint. And it's also true in what organizations that are on the front line need to do. They need to embrace more of that. And I think for you and me, and I think some of the places we've already had fun together, it's been operating in that, like, well, it's not this, and it's not this, and it's not this. It's actually all of that, but we're going to find a way to turn that into a thing. And so, yeah, man, just stoked to be doing this with you. And, it's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. The stuff that you're talking about with, looking at the fact that, like, okay, we have to be willing to be uncomfortable. We have to be willing to, in order to get better, you've got to be able to look at things that aren't working, or are not optimal, and say, I'm willing to make an adjustment. A lot of times, we can wind up, sometimes that thing that we have to look at, is our baby. and we have to be able to admit sometimes that our baby is ugly. Nobody wants to admit that their baby is ugly, and sometimes we have to be able to do that in order to deliver on purpose, and to be able to reap the rewards from that. And that's why, again, the having the mission right, knowing why you're doing what you're doing, allows you to go through that. Like you said, it allows you to go through that. And so I think that obviously we've got a mission. We're both passionate about this stuff. Obviously, things aren't going to be easy. The reason that anybody hires somebody to help them do this stuff better is because they are in an uncomfortable spot. There's,
no doubt.
But I love working through that stuff with people. I love digging in and helping people deal with those uncomfortable truths, if you will, and say, hey, this is the worst of it right here. It's just from here on out, everything is up because we're actually working on it. So let's go.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited about doing that. I wanted to make sure that you folks, the audience, had a chance to get introduced to David, for us to talk about some of our ethos and some of the cool things that we're doing now. Not making this a big commercial, but I am really excited that my full-time job now is doing exactly what this podcast is about, and I am super excited to be able to go on this journey with David. We're bringing you along for the ride. The same thing is going to happen here. We're going to talk about things that are pertinent to being able to execute on great customer experience. I've talked about the 5 forces of great CX. If you haven't listened to that episode or watched that episode, head back and pick that up, because we're going to be referencing back to those things, and we're going to be touching on those topics as they pertain to different parts of executing in your business and with your customers. We're going to be bringing in people who we both think are smart people, to be able to talk to them and have them give their ideas. We've already got one interview that we've got lined up and we're excited about. So more great stuff to come. Anything you want to close out with, David? Anything else you want to say?
Nah, man, I'm excited to be here. This is the stuff I love, man. So can't wait to do it with you. And let's get going.
Awesome. So, folks, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, this is obviously a new thing here, actually doing video out on YouTube so that we're easier to find. Really appreciate you subscribing, appreciate you hitting the like button if you thought that it was useful. You can find me on Twitter at Devin W. Smith. David, where can we find you?
Man, I'm like hidden at this point. I guess there's my transparent answer, right? So I need to fix that. Right now, I exist only on LinkedIn. So there you go.
All right. Well, find him on LinkedIn. Follow him, folks. We are really excited about you coming on this journey with us. And until next time, keep out serving your competition on your relentless pursuit to become an experience leader. Catch you in the next one.